You went on to become the director of the Federal Judicial Center, and you did some pretty remarkable stuff there with mindfulness that, at least as far as I know and believe, really just opened the door in a way that could have taken so many more years to have mindfulness be front and center for judges across the country. Could you say a little bit about what motivated you? Because you probably could have done lots of things in that role, and a little bit about what it is that took place over the good number of years you were
Sure.
there.
No, thank you. I mean, so, what the Federal Judicial Center does, it has two major functions. One is that it does research on court administration and looks at different kinds of policies that the courts can use in organizing themselves. It has nothing to do with how they decide cases. It has to do with how courts are run and managed. And then the other thing it does is it educates judges at all levels of the judiciary and also senior administrative staff throughout the judiciary. So there's a whole, in a way, it's like a little university for the judiciary. And so the role of the director is to manage the curriculum and establish priorities and kind of give strategic direction. And this issue of decision-making was something that was on my mind when I arrived. I mean, that I had been involved quite deeply in judicial education in California as a state court judge and had been fascinated by it then. And it goes back to what I was saying a minute ago about what is going on in the courtroom or what's going on in the case, what are the interests of the parties, and also what's going on for the decision maker. That all of those kinds of things were in my mind. And so the process of making decisions was something I was really interested in. And I was looking at things like how people would describe themselves, what attributes they have, that they find helpful in doing their job, looking at things that way. And then looking at things like unconscious bias, which certainly has been an issue that's been front and center for some time. And the more I thought about those things, the more I kept thinking to myself, and by this time I'd been meditating for a long time. I started in 1997. And I kept saying, well, this is basically all about mindfulness. That all of the things we're teaching, all the things we're talking about, ultimately come back to how mindful are you? Are you paying attention to what's going on in the situation? Are you here? Are you present? Are you engaged? Or are you somewhere else? Are you in the past? Or are you in the future? Are you outside or something? And so I kept thinking about it, and I said, why don't I just say something about this? I mean, by that time I'd been the director for almost 5 years, and felt pretty comfortable. I was pretty senior, I had a lot of judicial service. I knew a lot of people. I'd done very serious legal cases, so it wasn't like I was some woo-woo guy from California, even though I am from California. It's like, it was just, I felt like I was taken seriously as a judge, but I also felt, I have this role as an educator. And to me, this is like what all these things, all the lines from all these different things lead to mindfulness. It's because it could be the way you make decisions. It could be how aware you are of biases and what you do about them. It could be the way you treat people. Just things like what kind of demeanor you have in the courtroom. It all kind of goes back to how aware are you? How much do you have in the way of self-awareness at any given point in time? And mindfulness is a tool for increasing your self-awareness. It's a way of kind of exercising and developing those muscles. It's not quite a perfect analogy, but I mean, that's really the idea, that you kind of get to where you have a different baseline than you would have had otherwise. And I always talk to people about that to me, the greatest gift I've gotten from meditating is equanimity. And it doesn't mean that I never feel bad. I mean, it doesn't even mean I never get irritated or that I never get angry. I do. But in terms of where my baseline is, I'm so much calmer and more centered today than I was, 23 years ago. It's just, some of it's getting older, but some of it is just really practicing, being in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and when one is a judge and has so much power, all the more I would think um, useful it is, because it's easy to not keep track of oneself and to not be as attentive, because there's not as much of an external corrective.
Oh,
Um,
it's such an important point. I mean, it's one, and the farther up the ladder you get, the more important it is. I mean, I think the power grid is a real problem uh, in the judicial profession, and it hasn't gotten enough attention because you don't get the correction from the environment. People don't correct you, and so if you don't have, I mean, and even your colleagues, who could correct you, I mean, they don't see you in the courtroom. They're in their own courtroom, so you don't really get the feedback that you need
mm,
very often. And then when you get it, I mean, I've had colleagues who've gotten negative feedback. You're too hard on people, or you yell at people too much, or whatever, and they get defensive. They say, well, that person deserved to get yelled at. And it's like, it's a hard one, and I think power is definitely part of the problem. So and I but I think the nice thing about mindfulness practice is it's about as democratic as anything could possibly be. I mean, anybody can do it, right? And so, but I think it's particularly good for people who are in positions of power, because you can come to some understanding of that as well.
yes. So